Muy buenas noches, amigos. ¿Cómo les va? Yo estoy de buen humor porque, si bien, tenemos la confirmación definitiva de que nuestro mundo está regido por una caterva de degenerados monstruosos capaces de hacer daño a las criaturas más inocentes solamente por placer, todavía nos queda, por un lado, nuestra honradez y nuestra decencia, y por el otro, a la mayoría de nosotros, sé que nos mira gente desde Cuba, increíblemente, aunque no quiero hacer mucha laraca al respecto, no vaya a ser que tengan consecuencias o cosas por el estilo, pero nos queda un poco de libertad. Libertad suficiente para ser salvada, es decir, para tomar las decisiones que pueden evitar que terminemos el día de mañana en un gulag de 15 minutos, por ejemplo, desposeídos bajo el lema de no tendrás nada y serás feliz. Y bueno, por supuesto, el fruto del esfuerzo. No estamos condenados a vivir en el régimen de crédito social chino, pero todo tiene un precio en la vida. Primero, me he dado cuenta de la paradoja de que algunas personas han descubierto el hecho de que existe un sujeto llamado Jeffrey Epstein y que tenía extorsionados a todo el espectro de la política, lo descubrieron ahora. Y esas mismas personas antes nos llamaban abiertamente teóricos de la conspiración, a quienes sostuvimos con datos periodísticos rigurosos y evidencia judicial que esto era así, porque no es que lo descubrimos ahora simplemente vimos los detalles más escabrosos plasmados en imágenes, pero les consta que hace años muchos narramos esto. Me refiero en este caso a la señorita, disculpen a veces por mi falta de modulación, tiene que ver con que trabajo muchísimo, estimados amigos, para tenerlos informados. Gloria Álvarez. Yo no tengo nada en contra de Gloria Álvarez. Gloria Álvarez está invitada acá, podemos hacer una conversación, podemos hacer un debate, podemos hacer lo que quiera. Pero bueno, Gloria Álvarez, yo la conocí en Guatemala hace mucho tiempo, una sola vez en la vida la vi. Me dieron en aquella oportunidad, tenía 20 años, el premio Richard Cobden de un centro, Richard Cobden Centre, me lo dieron en la Universidad Francisco Marroquín, y siempre cuento mi impresión a riesgo de ser injusto con Guatemala, y es la siguiente. Guatemala es un lugar muy bonito si tenés muchos millones de dólares. A diferencia de Paraguay, por ejemplo, que es un país extraordinario, con que ya tengas 50.000 y ganas de trabajar, digo yo, vas para adelante. Yo me alojé en el Hotel Hilton Princesa del Caribe y no me gustó, porque hay un punto ya de la opulencia que me desagrada. Me gusta el buen vivir, soy un burgués hecho a mí mismo, pero no sé, no me gustaba ya esa extrema opulencia, y especialmente me sentí medio encerrado, porque me dijeron que no podía salir, y dije, ¿cómo que no podía salir? Y naturalmente, y además a esa edad, si me lo dicen ahora voy a salir, a esa edad salí corriendo, y así fue lo que hice. Obviamente, ¿cómo no voy a salir? Estoy en otro país, tengo que conocerlo, pero las advertencias eran relativamente sabias, hay que decirlo, porque nada más me metí en callejuelas de la antigua Guatemala tras tomarme un taxi cochambroso y observaba los agujeritos de bala en las paredes, los coches carbonizados, un par, porque había habido algún tipo de incendio, mensaje mafioso, además de una muy bella arquitectura colonial española. Y no salten hispanistas, creo que lo último lindo que habían hecho en esa zona, por supuesto, era esa arquitectura colonial española, que además estaba derruida por, vaya uno a saber cuántos sismos, guerras civiles y calamidades. Muy bajitos todos los guatemaltecos, algunas personas realmente encantadoras, pero en general no parecían muy abiertas al diálogo con el turista. Y me acuerdo de haberme topado con uno que, con campera de cuero, evidentemente de las maras, unos cuantos tatuajes, me miró así y me hizo así. Y yo dije, bueno, la gente del hotel tenía razón eventualmente. Y luego pude volver. ¡Ah! Me olvidé de una secuencia. Retrocediendo sobre mis pasos, en una especie de plaza estilo centro histórico cívico, hago y piso así algo como pegajoso y pensé, mierda de perro, perdón por la vulgaridad. Bueno, no, era un charco de sangre semicoagulada y había un cadáver hinchado ahí, pudriéndose probablemente hace 2 días y la gente caminando alrededor como si nada. Experiencias que enriquecen la condición humana, ¿no? Incluso a partir de... Uno va desarrollando cierta inhibición ante el horror, sin embargo yo no puedo ver las fotos de los niños o de las mujeres o de los hombres mutilados en Gaza ante el horror, ante la descarga del odio visceral de los sionistas. Hasta el día de hoy me produce, me destruye. Como me destruye a veces el recuerdo de mi amigo Iorio, de mi padre o de la gente que no está, como cualquiera, pero he visto muchas cosas en la vida. ¿A qué vamos con todo esto? Ahí yo la conozco a Gloria Álvarez en el medio de un castillo, pues realmente la Fundación Francisco Marroquín puede parecer el paraíso, pero es más o menos la manzana de la perdición. Lo digo bien, ¿eh? Ojalá que me vuelvan a invitar porque es muy linda y tiene una biblioteca, si no recuerdo mal, tiene a Bastiat como nombre de uno de los salones. Creo que la biblioteca se llama Hayek o Mises, no lo recuerdo, pasaron muchos años, pero la jardinería es espectacular y si tenés suerte te podés cruzar con el gran Miguel Ancho Bastos dando una conferencia. Eso sí, todo eso está amurallado. Yo fui en helicóptero porque no sé qué problema había de violencia en las carreteras que estaba completamente... Era imposible ir si no era en helicóptero y todos guardias de seguridad armados, lo cual a mí no me parece mal, sinceramente. Pero nadie le importaba, y a la señorita Álvarez, que éramos todos, ¿cuánto? 2014, 12 años más jóvenes, a la señorita Álvarez ni a ninguno de los presentes le importaba demasiado la situación real de Guatemala. ¿Quién iba a saber que había un señor llamado Fred Machado ahí haciendo negocios con una aldea inhóspita donde no llegaba el Estado, haciendo negocios de narcotráfico, que llevaría, que le mandaría dinero desde allí, de Guatemala, a Expert y todas cosas que, bueno, luego fueron sucediendo y construyéndose después. Ahora Expert del preso, Fred Machado ya está preso en Estados Unidos, todo esto por mi investigación, modestia aparte. ¿Quién diría? Pero bueno, me acuerdo de eso, ¿no? Esa sensación de estamos encerrados acá en la montaña hablando de la teoría subjetiva del valor, mientras afuera realmente hay un infierno. Ese infierno no es muy distinto al que hoy puede verse en algunas calles de Madrid, al que sin duda se ve y se sufre en las de Nueva York, Los Ángeles y múltiples ciudades de Estados Unidos. México, bueno, no tengo que hablar, lamentablemente ya lo saben, y bueno, ni hablar de los países que ya están aniquilados. Pero bueno, Gloria Álvarez se enteró de que existe una élite pedófila que controla el mundo ahora, en 2026. Y ahí la tienen candidata a presidenta, claro, ¿no? La eterna tentación, la fatal arrogancia de dirigirle la vida a los demás. Gloria, con todo respeto, o sea, ya estamos grandes, ¿no? Me parece que ya está bastante claro que el Estado no se limita desde dentro. Vos misma sabés lo que es mi ley. ¿Por qué querés ser otra mi ley? Es irónico, lo digo con respeto, es irónico cómo la sociedad quemó vivas en hogueras a miles de mujeres por la mínima sospecha de brujería, pero cuando unas docenas de hombres son expuestos, uy, Dios mío, qué laraca, feminista, por Dios, cuando una docena de hombres son expuestos por los más despreciables actos conocidos por la humanidad, los mismos siguen caminando libres entre nosotros. Pero nena, ¿vos no sabías que hay un montón de mujeres en la lista de Epstein? Y para empezar, la gran reclutadora que le dio el know-how del negocio se llama Ghislaine Maxwell. Y por cierto, Donald Trump le concedió hace rato ya los permisos para salidas transitorias en una cárcel de mínima seguridad. Pero no quiere salir Ghislaine porque sabe que afuera la espera un puñal, ¿no? Como a Pedro Navaja. Todas las vidas que Epstein tocó, decía el post original, y me parece bien. El patriarcado bipartidista mundial, Dios mío, no puedo creer cómo llegó a esto, Gloria, le juro que no había leído esto. El patriarcado bipartidista mundial ha bajado a un nuevo nivel, pelearse por cuál de los dos lados criminales tiene más pedófilos libres, izquierda o derecha. Saquen la estupidez patriarcado, después está bien. Tras el colapso de estas obsoletas estructuras para empezar a formar un futuro libre de ellas, bienvenidos a la presentación de mi nuevo bestseller, bueno, en fin. Y está mostrando ahí a Jeffrey, supongo que esto es IA. No es IA. Bueno, podría serlo. Pues, ok, así estamos, en esta era de la posverdad, señores. Pero bueno, la tipa se entera de que la izquierda y la derecha están dominadas por los mismos pedófilos extorsionadores y le faltó la parte de a sueldo del Mossad. Esa parte te faltó y ahí, Gloria, te gradúas de libertaria cuando dejes lo del patriarcado afuera y le agregues lo del Mossad. Invitada a conversar cuando quieras. Bueno, pero nosotros nos enteramos más o menos de cómo funciona el mundo. O sea, en esta comunidad de casi 770.000 suscriptores, de los cuales más de 300.000 miran más de un video a la semana. No somos tontos. Si hacemos 2 videos por día, ahora vamos a hacer algunos menos, no se preocupen. Los que querían que hagamos menos, vamos a hacer menos, nos van a extrañar. Pero está todo bien. Mejor así. Los hacemos porque tenemos gente que nos mira en España, gente que nos mira en Estados Unidos, gente que nos mira en México, gente que nos mira en Colombia, en Argentina. Y hacemos contenido que les interese la mayor cantidad posible, pero también hacemos cosas específicas. Entonces tratamos de tenerlos a todos atendidos debidamente. Bueno, nosotros comúnmente se diría somos despiertos, sabemos cómo funcionan en gran medida ciertas cosas, estamos de acuerdo, tenemos consensos en torno a la libertad es importante, la propiedad privada también, no quiero que me metan preso por un tuit, no estoy de acuerdo con meter preso a otro porque fume un porro tampoco, aunque yo no lo fume o sí, o porque, no sé, quiera hacer homeschooling con sus hijos y darle una educación religiosa mientras sea pacífica, ¿qué problema hay, no? Bueno. Estamos de acuerdo con la libertad, la dignidad humana, y que una caterva de tecnócratas pedófilos que cometen canibalismo no están en condiciones de dictarnos los códigos morales con los cuales tenemos que organizar nuestra vida. Bien. Para aquellos que quieran tener una vida más libre, más tranquila, ya hace un cambio radical que es me voy del país donde estoy, como se fue mi amigo Paco Vallejo de España, y dijo, me voy, este tío, Nicolás, critica a todos los políticos, el único país del cual ha hablado bien es me voy, Paraguay, listo. Aquí con nosotros Paco Vallejo, el otro día estábamos comiendo muy rica comida peruano-japonesa. Campeón mundial juvenil de ajedrez, le ganó varias partidas al campeón mundial Magnus Carlsen y 5 veces campeón nacional de España. Se fue por el totalitarismo fiscal. Bueno, está el que se quiere ir definitivamente y está el que quiere explorar y dice, bueno, como un amigo mío que es hispano de Estados Unidos, que me conoció también a través de las videollamadas de Patreon, yo me voy a comprar un departamento primero, voy a ver qué tal, voy a crear una unidad de negocio, luego vendo mi casa en Estados Unidos y hago el negocio con ese capital. Sea como sea, el que quiera escapar de la Matrix todavía puede. En 2020 no pudiste. Y eso fue un experimento social y probaron a ver cuánta gente está dispuesta a tolerar esta locura. Mucha gente incluso ya se mudó en 2020 y se fue a un país que descubrió no es mi lugar. Otra señora a la que estamos asistiendo le ha pasado de todo, ¿no? Pobre mujer, pero ha estado en el lugar incorrecto en cada momento. En la Argentina, en Chile, cuando las protestas violentas comunistas en las calles, cosa que nunca hubo en Paraguay, por cierto, y por suerte, todo derramando sangre y demás en 2019, en la Argentina con el encierro totalitario del COVID de Alberto Fernández, que ni siquiera podía trabajar y no le homologaban el título, por cuestiones familiares terminó en el país donde menos quería terminar, Israel, y ahora tiene que escapar de ese infierno. Mucha gente que ha trabajado, que se ha esforzado, que tiene un ahorrito, que tiene una propiedad, que se ha ganado algo, no quiere que se lo quiten. Para esas personas, nosotros no solamente estamos brindando asesoría a través de Patreon, pueden colaborar, o sea, pueden acceder a nuestro servicio, mejor dicho, en este caso, o sea, siempre pueden colaborar en Patreon desde $3 mensuales, pero pueden acceder a la asesoría a través de las videollamadas de patreon.com/Nicolás Moraz, que son de $100. 45 minutos, pero en la práctica siempre termino hablando más, porque además la gente me cae muy bien, me termino siendo amigo, pues obviamente son personas que me siguen, confían en mí, comparten mis principios, etc. Y bueno, estamos armando algo grande. Bajo la premisa, además, yo como libertario, como anarcocapitalista, he visto muchos proyectos, a veces cosas que mueren porque lo perfecto es enemigo de lo bueno. He visto muchas cosas fracasar y no me metí en ellas, ¿no? La Free City de Honduras, cuando Peter Thiel parecía un hombre desconocido que no se sabía que tenía un prontuario criminal y total, eso en 2008, 2009, 2010. La quebrada de Galta en Chile, que se vendían terrenos de 500, 600 mil dólares y estafaron a gente buena como Wendy McElroy, por ejemplo. Gran libertaria Wendy McElroy estadounidense. Me acuerdo de Bonner, yo lo conocí a Bill Bonner en persona, un inversor que ahora es sionista y mileísta y está llevando gente a perder plata en la Argentina. Hay que ser degenerado. Y luego hay gente muy profesional, que no es libertaria, pero bueno, todos estos tipos querían hacer civilizaciones y tal. ¿Y dónde las querían ubicar? En lugares donde no hay libertad. Honduras, lamentablemente parecido a Guatemala. Donde no hay seguridad. Chile también. Pero Chile, ¿quién se compró el cuento de que Chile, lo sabemos bien, quién se compró el cuento de que Chile es libre? Rodrigo Prenafeta, Paralelo 33, nuestro amigo, profesor de la Academia Libertaria, principal youtuber independiente de Chile. Miren toda la barrabasada de impuestos liberticidas, gente que está 15 años presa en Chile, porque tiene una deuda injusta que le reclama el fisco, como el fisco retenía a Pago, que no podía vivir en paz porque estaba todo el tiempo con temas judiciales en España. El fisco en Chile así ha tenido 20 años argentinos, gerentes, que les reclamaban una deuda injusta y no se podían ir, no podían ver a sus hijos. Ya vimos lo que fue Chile, igual que Argentina, durante el encierro masivo. He hablado con una persona que se fue, un importante empresario millonario, que se fue de Chile por eso. Dijo, yo no voy a estar acá viviendo como si fuera un preso domiciliario, ¿no? Que es una locura. En fin, distintas personas, ¿no? Incluso que ya se han movido y se arrepienten de donde se fueron. Bueno, lo perfecto es enemigo de lo bueno. Hay un país que no es perfecto, pero es bastante bueno. Incluso mis problemas en ese país, ¿cómo hubiera terminado yo? Pues ladrones hay en todas partes y falsas denuncias también, pero ¿cómo hubiera terminado yo si me pasaba en España? Si me pasaba en la propia Argentina, si me pasaba en Uruguay o en Suecia, ni hablar. Donde nadie se puede, no se puede acostar uno tranquilo con nadie, porque puede terminar preso por cualquier cosa. Miren a Assange. O sea, hasta lo malo es peor en otros lugares. Lo dice un tipo que se fue a Argentina, ya lo tenía decidido desde hace tiempo, porque yo conocí Paraguay en 2013 y dije, este es mi lugar en el mundo. No lo dije de inmediato, lo dije cuando me di cuenta de que con 19 años me había convertido en un publicista tan respetable que terminó a los 20 como gerente de marketing de una empresa importante. Y nadie me preguntó nada, yo no tenía título secundario, les demostré que valía y bien. Y hablé del milagro paraguayo por primera vez. Entonces estamos ante un evento histórico que es el siguiente. Vamos a inaugurar un nuevo canal, un segundo canal, que se llama El Milagro Paraguayo. Y está dirigido a estas personas, que son las mismas que van a acceder a las videollamadas de Patreon, a quien le interese, por supuesto, una segunda residencia, un destino de protección patrimonial, un lugar donde puedan criar a su familia con soberanía individual respetada, donde hay niños, donde hay tasa de natalidad grande, donde hay cada vez más crecimiento económico y más población hace 25 años, y presentarlos a desarrolladores, inmobiliarios, inversores y profesionales que comparten nuestros valores, que eso es lo más importante. Caer en buenas manos. Pues la diferencia de caer en buenas manos y malas manos es la diferencia entre una buena decisión que te salva la vida o perder mucho dinero y tiempo, como ya le pasó a muchas personas. En este podcast van a descubrir Paraguay conmigo, a través de extranjeros como Paco, que ya hemos grabado la entrevista, de nacionales como el gran empresario Salim Salema, el periodista Cristian Vázquez, que van a ir dialogando conmigo sobre este misterio gustoso que es un país en el mundo donde todavía hay libertad y propiedad privada. Me van a decir, Moraz, si vos seguís haciendo publicidad de Paraguay como hacés desde que inventaste el término milagro paraguayo en 2014, desde entonces muchísimo crecimiento económico, muchísimas buenas noticias como la prohibición de la ideología de género en las escuelas, gran batalla de mi amiga Valeria Infran y de otras madres paraguayas. Muchas cosas buenas pasaron desde entonces. Dicen, si seguís haciéndole publicidad nos van a arruinar, nos van a acabar, ¿no? Van a venir a Paraguay, van a acabar a Paraguay. Yo no creo que eso sea así, al contrario. Yo hablaba con gente digamos, de la aristocracia en sentido griego de la palabra, de personas íntegras, de trayectorias impecables y grandes principios que me han ayudado muchísimo a mí. Yo vivo media vida, desde 2013 he vivido media vida en Paraguay y la mayoría del tiempo que viví fuera y que estoy fuera es por otros temas que tienen que ver con el trabajo, que han tenido que ver con tragedias personales como la muerte de mi padre, que me tuvo muchos años retenido en la Argentina contra mi voluntad y de la que me fui, casi me matan, como ustedes recuerdan, en la Argentina. Y tratando los temas que trato, haciendo las cosas que hago, yo no podría vivir en México. Yo no podría vivir en Chile, no podría vivir en España, no podría vivir en Inglaterra, no podría vivir en Brasil, mucho menos en El Salvador, no podría vivir sin duda en los Estados Unidos. Hay muchísimos países donde yo no solo no puedo vivir, no puedo visitar siquiera, porque mi vida, bueno, con todas las cosas que pasan, yo vivo tranquilo hace muchos años acá. Y si muchas personas con capital y con talento vienen a un país joven, en crecimiento, que no es xenófobo y que abre los brazos al mundo, eso es una masa crítica para mantener el statu quo. Mucha gente interesada en que las cosas sigan siendo así. Esa en parte es la base de la estabilidad de Paraguay, así que cuantos más seamos que valoremos la libertad y la propiedad privada y hagamos negocios en Paraguay con las mejores personas de Paraguay, con la gente correcta, que es exactamente la función del proyecto que tenemos en cierne, mejor, ¿verdad? Así que los invito a todos a suscribirse a El Milagro Paraguayo, que es nuestro nuevo canal. Mañana se publica la primera entrevista, que es a Salim Salema, precisamente, un buen amigo que conocí en la televisión, en el programa de Carsten Fau, Libres para elegir, al que fui muchísimas veces. Hace poco me entrevistó don Federico Galeano Estigarribia, el mejor entrevistador de Paraguay en Líderes. Así que suscríbanse a youtube.com/elmilagropy. El Milagro Paraguayo, ponen señores, Nicolás Moraz. Vayan y suscríbanse, y como siempre les digo, bueno, miren, acá está nuestro documental. Les voy a dejar el link en la descripción, El Milagro Paraguayo. Paul, ahora mismo ponla. Pon, además de Patreon, este link en nuestra descripción, El Milagro PY. Suscríbanse, activen, fíjense cómo lo estoy haciendo, activen todas las notificaciones. Muy importante, siempre se los digo. Ustedes cuando se suscriban a cualquier canal, no importa si es mío o no, esto se lo digo honestamente, no dejen la suscripción personalizada por defecto. Pues miren, hagamos de cuenta que no se suscribieron. Bueno, ustedes entran al canal. En este caso es El Milagro Paraguayo, mi segundo canal, que a quienes les interese esto, bienvenida a su suscripción. Si ustedes hacen esto, no le van a llegar todos los videos. Porque usted dice personalizada. Y personalizada significa que elige YouTube, no elige usted. Entonces usted tiene que poner todas. Entonces le van a llegar la mayoría de las notificaciones, por lo menos, si usted coloca la opción todas. Y usted elige qué ve y qué no, como ser adulto y responsable que es. Así que bueno, para quienes les interese lo que estamos por hacer, que va a incluir incluso viajes para que personas se conozcan entre sí, todo con acompañamiento personalizado mío, patreon.com/Nicolás Moraz, y contratan la videollamada de $100 mensuales. Hay para grandes inversores calificados, hay para gente de clase media que tiene algo y lo quiere salvar de las garras del globalismo y quiere echar raíces en un buen país, o por lo menos explorarlo. Así que vamos a estar hablando mucho de estas cosas. Traemos a Paul Gray y ahora los vamos a noticiar sobre las catástrofes que ocurren en el mundo. Un comentario más último. Yo conozco a este hombre hace tiempo, Nomad Capitalist. Es muy interesante el contenido que hace. Hace poco lanzó un documental de Paraguay en un lugar a donde yo llevé a Paco a comer, el hermoso hotel La Factoría. Ahí estamos viendo, probablemente lo visitemos con los inversores que ya están hablando para venir. Pero ¿cuál es la diferencia entre Nomad Capitalist y el proyecto nuestro? Que un montón de gente puede contarte cómo es Paraguay, qué maravilloso es Paraguay, cómo es su caso, qué lindo que son los shopping, cómo crecen las torres. Pero bueno, el señor quiere vender un departamento a $900.000 que en realidad vale 200. Ahí está esa hermosa biblioteca donde charlé con tablero de ajedrez mediante con mi amigo Paco. Entonces, finalmente lo que se necesita es un vaquiano que conecte o al empresario o al profesional con la gente correcta y le arme un plan correcto y personalizado para instalarse en un lugar donde va a ser más libre. Él y eventualmente su familia y sus seres queridos. Fin. Ahora vamos con el mundo espantoso, sombrío y horrendo que lamentablemente nos toca cubrir y que nunca dejaré de cubrir, no se preocupen, no importa que haya otros negocios o que cuán bien me vaya, nunca dejaré de ser periodista, salvo cuando me metan un balazo, pero en ese caso ustedes se van a encargar de compartir mis videos para que no se los trague el olvido. Bienvenido, mi buen amigo Paul Gray. ¿Qué nos cuentas? Quiero que analicemos la última entrevista de Jeffrey Epstein, que es casi un epitafio del nuevo orden global, y luego analizarla te dejo a cargo.
Bueno, vamos directamente entonces con la entrevista. ¿Qué te parece? Lo vemos a continuación. El señor Jeffrey fue entrevistado por Steve Bannon. Lo vamos a ver. Esta entrevista Es algo de lo que se hablaba muchísimo y no teníamos plena certeza siquiera de que existía, nunca veía la luz y finalmente la podemos conocer.
Let's give some basics or some things I want to do inquiry from the others. Walk me through the Santa Fe Institute. What was it about the time of the math? And this was in the late 90s. So they're not going to hear me on this part, right? We're going to do it both ways?
It will not be on the video, but we do have you recorded.
Fine. Remember, when you're answering on these questions, I'm not in the shot, and they're never going to hear my voice. So a little bit, you got to repeat in your answer, you got to repeat what my question was.
Oh,
a little bit.
Okay.
Santa Fe Institute. Why, when you're at the top of your game on Wall Street, do you decide to finance, which was at the time, or endow, or become the donor or sponsor, however you want to say it, for what was considered the most cutting edge group of mathematicians in the world? Action.
So Santa Fe Institute in the late 80s, early 90s, I was interested, I was on the board of Rockefeller. So that starts, Rockefeller University, formed by John D. Rockefeller to sort of give back to the community. It's east side of Manhattan, except it was old. It was sort of old fashioned. They were talking about medicine, and medicine by itself was again subject to the ideas of science. They were trying to use science to find cures for disease. And I said, no, we need to do something different. We need to start interdisciplinary work. In most,
how did a schmuck like you get on the board of Rockefeller? What year was that?
I don't remember. Late, I think 89 and 91.
So that's one of the most prestigious research places in the world, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How did a guy like you get on the board of a blue blood, internationally known, hard research, Nobel Prize winners all over the place? How do they pick a guy like you, a trader from, or basically some guy from Bear Stearns?
Good question. So I was asked to be on the board of Rockefeller, and I think I was on the board of Rockefeller. There was a money manager who said Rockefeller needs someone with financial expertise because the university is growing and there's lots of new things. You have to, again, we go back to the original discussion the last time. Up until the mid 80s or sort of early mid 70s, the most important thing was your name. If you were Rockefeller, you already were considered to be brilliant. If you were head of General Motors, it was your reputation. It was who you knew, who your family was, what was your character. And then in the mid 70s, basically, if you remember, you probably had a calculator. It was very advanced in those days to have a Texas Instrument calculator where it could, by putting in the numbers, it would multiply for you to do square roots. And that was the first, and everyone who had a calculator was already advanced on Wall Street. A simple almost like your accountant. The most important parts of business were really now going to calculations. So it's not only mathematics, but it's things that could be calculated. Reputation couldn't be calculated. I could give you, are you a 10 on a reputation scale, an 8? What does it mean to have a measurement of your reputation? We'll get to that later. But places like Rockefeller needed someone to say, look, we're entering a different world where numbers and the numbers of companies, portfolio management was going to be balanced. It was going to be statistical. Jeffrey, could you come on the board? Potentially sit on the finance committee, Nancy Kissinger and a bunch of other people. And David Rockefeller and I got along very well. He was this unbelievable human being. Respectful to everyone. He introduced his driver as his colleague, not his driver. He would never say, this is my driver. He said, it's my colleague. And David started to explain to me world politics. So David would say, Jeffrey, money is going to be sort of the most important things. People don't understand money. You seem to have this knack for money. I said to David, tell me about your life. What was the worst and the best part of your life? So David said, when I grew up, everyone knew I was a Rockefeller. They didn't know that my father told me he would not leave me a dime, no money. But every time we went out to eat, me and my 5 friends at school, they would leave me the bill. They would expect me to pick up the check because I was a Rockefeller. And he said, I was chairman of Chase Bank. And he said, I remember like it was yesterday, one of the headlines in Time magazine said, David, please fire yourself. So he thought that there was a world that existed that would be a combination of both politics and business and leadership. What do I mean? He formed something called the Trilateral Commission. The Trilateral Commission is some spooky stuff. People said it was some of the people that, the Illuminati, there's some mystery about it, people that ran the world. It was politicians, but David said most countries, the politicians get elected for 4 years or 8 years, separate from the royal families in England or in the Middle East. Someone's there for 4 years and then they're not there anymore. The most important people to have stability and consistency would be businessmen. So he formed this Trilateral Commission of businessmen and politicians from 3 major continents. So it was the North Americans, the Europeans, and the Asians. So he said to me, would you like to be on the Trilateral Commission? Now, I was 30 years old, 32 years old. I said, great. And he said, well, you have to fill out this application so they have your bio. And I looked at the list of people, and it was Bill Clinton, former president of the United States, Paul Volcker, every great leader in America, the Asians, the Japanese, and with a very long description of their history. And they asked me to fill in what I would like to have written. And I wrote Jeffrey Epstein, comma, just a good kid, which I thought was funny. Nobody else did. So to answer your question, at that time, I recognized around the world that monies and currencies were not really well understood. But again, it was only numbers. So numbers, and I'll get to the fact that it was bad thinking. Numbers are very good.
Are most people that you meet, even on Trilateral Commission, when you meet most people, do you find most leaders financially illiterate, economically illiterate? Most political leaders don't come out of a background of finance. Most political leaders come out of a background of being popular. So in some of the countries, in some of the African countries, for example, they might have been a military person. They were a general. In some of the African countries, they might have been a
Esto es una clase magistral de un cerdo monstruoso que conoce las entrañas del poder y se ha dedicado profesionalmente a chantajearlo para la élite sionista. Pero es muy interesante lo que te está diciendo. Presten mucha atención porque nos está dando una clase el cerdo este. Hay que tener estómago, pero ténganlo. Como le dijo mi bisabuelo, el capitán Moraz, que nació en 1877 en una Buenos Aires de carros de caballos y murió tras ver al hombre llegar a la luna, porque el segundo calculo que es el correcto, de los alunizajes, y en la televisión, con 94 años, le dijo a mi papá, que le preguntó horrorizado, abuelo, ¿por qué usted lee a Karl Marx? Y agarró el capitán Moraz y le dijo, porque hay que leer al enemigo para combatirlo, hay que entenderlo. Sáquenle el jugo a Jeffrey Epstein porque es increíble lo que en esta última entrevista contó, admitiendo la basura que es y por otro lado exponiendo cómo funciona la farsa de la filantropía. Ya van a ver, esa parte es particularmente desquiciante. Ana Costa, gracias por tu colaboración. Tengo que comentar algunas cosas. Me pidieron que haga videos para inversores principiantes. ¿Saben cuándo voy a hacer videos para inversores principiantes? Referido a cuestión de, por ejemplo, el tema criptos, oro, etcétera. Cuando me sienta suficientemente seguro. Porque yo hace muchos años que manejo estas cosas, pero pierdo, gano, etcétera. Me estoy instruyendo cuando tenga suficiente instrucción. Lo que sí voy a hacer, y que va a ser de gran utilidad para inversores, desde lo que yo sé que es el periodismo y con la ayuda de quienes sí saben más de economía y finanzas, gente que ustedes conocen muy bien y que disfrutan mucho sus informes, etcétera, un boletín de inteligencia económica. Nosotros vamos a hacer un club, amigos. Vamos a hacer un club para las personas que tienen intención de resguardar su patrimonio y su libertad. Estén atentos porque me doy cuenta de que el futuro de la civilización pasa por la capacidad que tengamos de asociarnos con las personas correctas y establecernos en los lugares correctos. Esa es la epifanía que he tenido. Para todos los que me preguntan solución, bueno, la solución es esa. No es para todo el mundo, es para quien esté dispuesto a votar con los pies, como tantos hemos hecho, irse del lugar donde está, ya sea temporalmente, ya sea permanentemente, como mínimo explorar, y quien tenga algo para invertir y para salvar definitivamente, pero no en quimeras, en cosas sólidas con proveedores confiables. Todo esto se van a ir enterando tanto en el Milagro Paraguayo como quienes, por supuesto, ya contraten nuestras videollamadas en patreon.com/Nicolás Moraz. Gracias, debemos discernir desde Perú. Saludo, Nico. No escuchen si no los convence, pero por supuesto que no. Fíjense, ¿no? La cara de Jeffrey. El otro día le escribimos al único paraguayo que está en la lista de Epstein, no contestó. Y también le escribí a José Luis Manzano y tampoco contestó. Me lo esperaba. Panqueques Helado, nuevo miembro, muchas gracias por tu aporte. Muchas gracias. Respecto a lo de Bitcoin y Epstein, mira, pues, no, manejado por Epstein no, pero que puede estar cooptado por gente del Mossad y puede ser. Ahora, ¿a quién le conviene que caiga? No conviene mucho que caiga, sinceramente. No por el momento, eso creo. Y por otra parte, ¿cuánto es verdad de las cosas que decía Jeffrey? No lo sé. Parece que Jeffrey hubiera sido muchas veces guionado para decir cosas con las que luego pueda presionar a otros. Las partes más interesantes por eso son las partes donde Epstein, Gates, Trump escriben directamente, ¿no? O sea, los correos que escriben ellos son muy reveladores. Lo de sujetos monstruosos pidiendo bebés y sacrificios por su cuenta, eso lo puedes dar claramente, por cierto. Pero lo que escribe Jeffrey siempre está enmarcado en la gran operación de inteligencia de la cual estaba formando parte y ha quedado claro para el Mossad, aunque luego, por supuesto, terminó siendo doble informante con el FBI. Bueno, amigos, los dejo con Paul por un rato. Nos vemos. Tengo algunas cosas a las que ocuparme, pero vengo en un ratito y seguimos analizando. Paul, sácale jugo, páralo de tanto en tanto y comparte tus reflexiones que son buenas y agudas. Se está instruyendo de este tema incluso en sus vacaciones porque a esto le ponemos el alma, amigos. Yo particularmente hace 6 años no tengo vacaciones. Hasta la próxima. Hasta un ratito. Ya vuelvo. Adelante, Paul.
Claro, quería aclarar lo siguiente. Jeffrey Epstein no es que esté relacionado a Bitcoin, pero sí, bueno, ha estado en contacto constante con varios de los principales manejadores de lo que es la plataforma. Y eso fue lo que causó mucha polémica en los últimos días. Bueno, vamos a seguir con la entrevista de Steve Bannon a Jeffrey Epstein.
Jockey. Or in our country, they would have been an actor. The knowledge of money they don't have expertise, they have no degrees in finance. They really, and this is one of the major problems. Their expertise, if they have any financial knowledge, is of their own checking account or bank account and filling in their own taxes. So many world leaders who don't really have a financial underpinning make fundamental errors when it comes to money on a country or institutional level. Let me give you an example. If you, Mr. Bannon, if I said your assets increased last year, you'd say, that sounds pretty good. And I said, what does that mean to you?
Bueno, imagínense que Jeffrey diga su nombre de ustedes y probablemente se haya acercado con segundas intenciones a Steve Bannon, que tampoco es un nene de pecho, tampoco es una persona santa, está muy relacionado a los jesuitas, a, bancos del nivel de JP Morgan Chase y, por supuesto, también está relacionado a la inteligencia norteamericana.
You'd say, well, I have more money. I guess I'm wealthier. I'd say, yes. And if your debt increased, would you feel wealthier or poorer? You'd say, well, I don't want to have increased debt. I don't like the idea of that sound, increased debt. Now, that and world leaders understand when their assets go up, they feel better. However, institutions like banks, things that people don't really understand are financial underpinnings of banks. When I say your bank, Mr. Bannon, you have the Bannon Bank, you doubled your assets. Sounds good, but what does it really mean? It means people owe you more money. You don't have any more money. What? Yeah. A bank's assets are how much it is owed by other people. That's crazy. So if the bank goes from $2 billion of assets to $10 billion, it means people owe it an additional $8 billion, but their assets have gone up. So the terminology of assets and liabilities is different for banks. It's not natural. And what most people, and you ask questions about world leaders, there's many people, I think your old boss Mercer understood, there's a fundamental part of money which is called fractionalized banking. And fractionalized banking is something that finance people understand, and the people on the street, and when I say people on the street, that's where I was when I started on Wall Street, would find it impossible to believe. Impossible. Why? Bank, I give you $1, just one single dollar. In our system of banking, I would say, okay, Steve, I gave you $1. How much could you lend out to your friends? And your natural reaction would be probably something less than $1 because I want to keep something in my pocket. The way our system works is if you as a bank are holding my dollar, you can lend out an additional $8 or $9. No, it's impossible. I only have $1, Jeffrey. We have something called fractionalized reserves, which is if you have 1, you can lend out 9. That's the way our system works. And so not only do world leaders not understand banking, but the man on the street, my father who worked in the park department, it would be beyond his imagination that people could lend out more money than they actually had in their pocket. Next question.
But how did this, in understanding that, when you get on something like the Trilateral Commission, you're on the board at Rockefeller, which is the most advanced research. You get brought into the Trilateral, which is the elite of the elite. How, since you're only at that time
30-something years old.
8 years from teaching at Dalton, right? You're Dalton.
No, 10 years.
10 years teaching at Dalton.
Yes.
Walk us through. I mean, put us in the room. Walk me through exactly what it felt like. What it felt like being on the board at Rockefeller. You got these Nobel laureates, and you're sitting there making decisions, and you start to meet these people at Rockefeller. Now you start to meet these people at the Trilateral Commission.
Vamos a hablar mucho hoy de los Rockefeller, puesto que tenemos también noticias relacionadas a una de sus últimas adquisiciones. Y me refiero al alma del youtuber Mr. Beast.
What did it feel like?
It's a great question. So what did it feel
That's
like?
what I'm in the business of asking.
Yeah. What did it feel like meeting some of these people like Kissinger or Rockefeller? And those are two extraordinary people. But in general, I think the question, the people on Wall Street, I tell the story, the first day, one of the first days when I was in Wall Street, someone said to me, would you like to buy ATV? And I was looking in the brochure, and I couldn't figure out what stock had a symbol of ATV. And when I finally said, well, I can't find it. And they said, what's the matter with you? Do you want to buy ATV? Which is, he was selling hot televisions, stolen televisions from the floor of the American Stock Exchange, referred to in common parlance as the televisions fell off the truck. So I knew what that phrase meant from Coney Island. But what I found was most people, be it in business, in normal life, or in the world leaders, don't really understand money. It is something they think about. They have a sense of what it is. They certainly want more of it. But they also make statements like, we want more money, but we don't want more debt, which just shows a misunderstanding of what money at its core really is. So most people don't, they want to make it, they want to save it, but to understand it intimately is not a normal characteristic.
At the first Trilateral or something?
Yeah, good. You're good.
We'll pull down the chart of where your name was, but just give me roughly when it was.
I think it could be 90. I don't remember.
Okay. Let's say
Sorry.
early 90s.
Yes.
When you got on the Trilateral Commission and had the first, do you remember where the first meeting was?
It was in Tokyo.
In Tokyo. And at what hotel?
I would like to say the Hilton, but it's probably not.
And it's a 3-day, 4-day? Give me some.
Three-day event. And
walk me through the whole thing.
Speeches.
It starts with a dinner. Just walk me through it.
It was boring.
You couldn't possibly think it was boring. It's bullshit.
It was boring.
You had to be stars in your eyes.
No.
Did you fly over privately?
Yes, but it wasn't my plane.
So it didn't count?
No.
You fly over.
Yes.
And
it was
who were the first, like when you first met those leaders, you had to be wowed.
No.
You're 10 years out of Coney Island.
No, I'm not wowed by.
Por supuesto que no estaba ni impresionado, dado que tenía algo especial con los que los iba a chantajear, ¿no? Es por eso que lo dice con tal frialdad. Fíjense este sujeto cómo cambió 20 grados en sus emociones cuando se le pregunta eso. Es increíble. Es un depredador, es un monstruo.
People of position. I'm wowed by people of great ideas. And I don't care if it's the bus driver. I don't care if it's the student I had who has teeth coming out.
Well, these guys have to have great ideas. They're the leaders of the 3 great continents of the world: North America, Europe, and Japan.
No, many of these world leaders become world leaders because they're popular and they were able to get votes, or they were able to convince people to vote for them. I learned later. Many of them were just good at what they did in terms of politics. Remember, world leaders are politicians in general. They're not scientists, they're not intellectuals, they're not great thinkers, they're great politicians.
At the first Trilateral Commission meeting that you remember in Tokyo in sometime in the early 90s, do you remember what were the big issues of the day that they were talking about, and what did you think about it?
Yeah, in fact, it was funny because they were talking about inflation, and they were worried that what would happen, how do you control inflation? And as a mathematician, I didn't understand the concept. I don't understand the concept today. How's that possible? Well, when you talk about most things to do with money, money is meant to be local. It's US dollars. Then I understand what it means. If inflation, it means my dollar today inflates and it doesn't buy as much as it did a couple of years ago. The prices go up. It seems that everything is great, but in fact, my dollar is shrinking in value.
If you, and you're the financial genius here. I'm just a lowly M&A guy.
Sure. If you let me finish the thought.
Go ahead.
So if you're in America, you can feel inflation. Your salary's gone up, but you can't buy the same car. In fact, it starts to feel weird because the value.
That's why I wanted to ask the question. This is my point.
Sure.
The people who live and breathe this, the central bank.
Bueno, no puedo con Bannon diciendo que es un hombre normal cuando que trabajó durante décadas en Goldman Sachs, ¿no? Es decir, desde el año 84 a 1990. Increíble.
Banks have been haunted by the specter of inflation since the late 70s.
Yes.
First off, tell our audience, how did that happen? The two great financial events in the 20th century, I'm not going to get to the 21st, were the great inflation in Europe after World War I, the Great Depression, the hyperinflation in Germany that led to the rise of Hitler, and then this inflation in the mid-70s. Before you go to explain inflation, why is the specter of inflation always the central thing in central bankers' minds?
Because it goes back to the first concept I said, the weird concept of fractionalized reserves. The system is not well understood. And most systems, in fact, are not well understood. We don't know how our digestive system.
Stop. This is impossible. This is impossible. The world banking system, the world currency system, the world monetary system has to be so well understood by the Greenspans of the world and the Bernankes of the world and you, right? The currency traders, the guys making billion-dollar bets every day, the legendary guy on Wall Street in the late 90s, Versalin Brothers.
Lou Ranieri?
No, the guy that wrote the money.
Michael Lewis? Liar's Poker?
Yeah, Liar's Poker. Who's that about? That great trader.
Lou Ranieri.
No, when the guy that ran the desk, that eventually ran the hedge fund that went long.
Estos tipos son expertos, son absolutos expertos, por Dios. Se saben el ABC de las finanzas mundiales y del lado oscuro, ¿no?
Term capital.
Yes, I don't remember.
Who's the guy?
I want to say, I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Lunar is big, but
Yes.
those guys have to understand the system perfectly.
No, they don't understand the system. They understand the local part of the system. So, for example, why is not only inflation, most bankers are terrified if the public understood that the bank really doesn't have their money at any one time. It's one of the things during the Depression, there were runs on the bank. The reason the banks don't keep much money in the actual bank is they assume that not everyone's going to want their money on the same day. So it's not really the fear of inflation. The fear is a run on the bank. Everybody wants to take out something that doesn't really exist. Inflation is tied to interest rates. It's a more complicated example. But when your money doesn't buy the same amount of product this year than it did last year, if it buys less and less, like it happened, you used the term hyperinflation. There's certain countries that are not managed well, like in Africa at the current, a $100 billion bill in Zimbabwe is worth 1 American cent. That's the perfect example of hyperinflation. It goes up, it doubles every day. So people are afraid that their value in the system starts to break down.
Para un segundo.
So if I said to you, does your doctor...
Si yo soy doctor, miralo al tipo, explica mejor la economía que Milei. Obvio, si el chabón tenía todos estos banqueros mafiosos, monstruosos, revolcándose en las camas de sus mansiones con criaturas y los grababa. Agarran acá, miren, agarran acá. Argentina. Hoy Paul les va a contar reclutadores en Argentina. Brasil. Tenían todo un método para captar brasileras, el desgraciado. Colombia, Andrés Pastrana, acá José Luis Manzano, todos. En Venezuela, en Cuba, tenemos el video especial de su reunión con Fidel Castro. En México, el embajador estadounidense violando nenas con complicidad de las autoridades, y todo esto lo sabía López Obrador y lo dejaba pasar. Bueno, no vamos a hablar de Estados Unidos, ¿no? Pero miren, España, tenemos para el lugar del mundo que ustedes pueden hacer así, Rusia y Putin pueden hacer así, cualquier lugar del mundo van a encontrar gente extorsionada por este monstruo que te explica el sistema monetario y la estafa del dinero fiat alucinante en tu cara, escupiéndotelo a tu cara, ¿no? Dicho sea de paso, pocos países donde se puede comprar oro físico a precio onza, Paraguay es uno. ¿Con quién? Bueno, un contacto al que pueden acceder quienes formen parte de nuestra iniciativa, así que suscríbanse al Milagro Paraguayo. Ahí comenté con el canal del Milagro Paraguayo, el Milagro PY, @ el Milagro PY. Acá lo tienen. Hola muchachos, soy Moraz. Suscríbanse, estimados amigos, pueden cliquear ahí, lo voy a poner también acá abajo como link. Y bueno, ya saben, patreon.com/Nicolás Moraz y contratan una videollamada. Sigamos escuchando a Jeffrey Epstein enseñándonos la estafa del dinero fiat contada por su protagonista más, ¿cómo decirlo? No hay forma de decirlo que no sea grosero. Adelante, Paul.
You understand your body system. You'd say, well, I hope so, because I want them to keep me healthy. But you could have a kidney infection, you could have a heart attack, you could have a broken knee. There's lots of pieces of this system. And in fact, when you ask the question, very few doctors understand your entire body. There's a specialist for your knee, there's a specialist for your polynoidal cyst, there's a specialist for your head, and now we have specialists in different areas. So and I'm going to get to your first question about Santa Fe Institute. The world economy and your body are both comprised of little systems interacting with each other and making one big system.
This is what's stunning for all the little guys out there, the populist movement, the little guys that haven't had a pay raise in 30 years. They think that these elites, have everything. The guys in the room making the decisions, the party of Davos guys. You're sitting there, you don't think many people today really understand the complexity and really all the moving pieces and how they interconnect to the world's financial system.
No, not only don't they understand the complexity, and that goes back to Santa Fe Institute was an attempt of trying to see if there was a way to mathematize, formularize, or algorithmically understand what the term complexity means. That goes back to the original question. Complex systems are complex by definition, but there's not necessarily, it's not one level of complexity. We might say, well, our fingers are complex, the movements, the muscles of our hands, but it's not as complex as the blood system. Now I have a circulatory system. I have systems on top of systems, so that there's no one group of or person that really understands the way the body works. There's no one group that understands the way the financial systems work. You might understand US bond market. Now you've asked about the trade of long-term capital. That was a bond fund, very small part of this very complex system. So the goal of the Santa Fe Institute was to see, is there a way to get in, somehow understand how complex systems interact? Fast forward, Steve, to today, where Google and these other engine companies, the other tech companies, are trying to build artificial intelligence. The strangest thing that they've found, one of the strangest things, is that the systems that they design, this artificial intelligence, which a lot of people have heard about, is they design a bunch of systems. They're called neural nets. The term simply taken out of brain work, neurons in the brain. Nets because they actually look like a net. They put in some inputs. The computers work, spit out an answer. Sounds normal to you.
Bueno, a este punto yo no sé si es un genio describiéndonos el secreto de los bancos o la verdad que estaba usando de metáforas que tienen que ver con la biología del cuerpo, ¿no?
Because you're thinking about that calculator you had in 1976 on your desk. When you ask the person who designed the system, how did it come to that answer? How did your neural net, can you show me the calculations? They say, no, we don't know. We don't know how the thing we designed actually came up with that answer. That's pretty strange. They take the same neural net now and they put it in front of a video game. No learning, nothing. They said to the computer, they say, sit in front of your video game and learn how to play. It seems the computer learns better than any human in history, faster than any human in history, beats any human in history. But when you ask the designer, how did it do it?
Está hablando de la inteligencia artificial.
No one knows. It just did it. So that's the first little touch of things that we already have gotten to a place where we don't understand it and we built it.
On Sunday afternoon, September 14th, 2008, where were you?
Sorry?
It was the night they put Lehman Brothers in bankruptcy in London.
I was in jail.
Seriously?
Yes.
So the financial crisis of
Lo hice con una sonrisa.
2008 happened when you were in jail?
Yes.
Oh, this is going to be so amazing. This is going to be so amazing. I take it you didn't have your Wall Street Journal dropped off to you in the morning, your Financial Times.
No.
How did you hear about because I want
I forgot about this, but yes.
I'm trying to get this is going to be amazing. Let's go back and do that again. Sunday afternoon, because I want to find out about people, the geniuses understanding the complexity of the financial system. Because I think the best example we have is the financial crisis, the crash of 2008. Sunday afternoon, September 14th, I think it was, 2008, is when they were working feverishly in Midtown Manhattan at the Lehman Brothers offices and at various law firms around town, and with the Secretary of Treasury in the Federal Reserve, what they're going to do with Lehman. They decided they weren't going to save it. And so they prepared to put it into bankruptcy at the open of the market in London the next day. How did you hear about what was going to happen to Lehman Brothers, and what did you immediately think when you heard that it was going to be put into bankruptcy?
I'm glad you asked that question. I was in solitary confinement September 14th. And again, some of the public stories about the wonderful time I had in jail and my work release, which didn't come till months after. I'd been there since June in an 8x10 cell with a bed in the back, a 6-foot bed in the back, a chrome sink with a toilet attached to it, and a little piece of metal sticking out that was supposed to act as a table. Now, since I was in jail, there were no books. Why? There's no library. No library, but you're in jail. No, I was in jail, not prison. So in jail, I was in a place what's called the Special Housing Unit, which is for the roughest, toughest, meanest people.
Para un segundo.
They had put me there.
Vos te das cuenta que este tipo es muchísimo más inteligente que todos los clientes, incluyendo al tarado de Bill Gates que le mandó desde el mail de Microsoft que le recomiende un antibiótico para la enfermedad venérea que le transmitió la muchacha.
A su esposa, sí.
Él es más inteligente de todos. No fue tan inteligente como para sobrevivir el maligno este. Cínico. ¿Fue o es? Chan, chan, chan. Jeffrey Epstein, ¿está muerto? Se van a enterar después de muchas noticias, amigos. Así que bueno, adelante, Paul.
My own protection. So I was in a 8x10 cell with a little slit in the door where they would serve my food on a tray about 9 inches by 4 inches. And then as soon as I finished eating, they would take the tray and close it down. And one of the guards said, do you understand there's Wall Street's crashing. I'm worried about my pension fund. What should I do? And I said, sorry, Wall Street's crashing. What's happened? And he said, there's some crisis and some companies are going bankrupt. I said, are you sure? And he said, yeah, it's all over the papers. We're all terrified. We're going to lose our life savings because we have either a 401k or our pension funds. We don't know anything about money. Mr. Epstein, can you tell us, like, what's going on? Am I going to be able to afford my children's education? Am I going to be bankrupt like this company called Lehman Brothers? And there's another company in the front page today called Bear Stearns. Oh, no, I said. Why? Because that's the company I was a partner in. And in fact, that was a company I had a very large investment in. So, as a great story, I didn't have my Wall Street Journal, but in the early mornings, you're allowed to make 2 phone calls, collect. And when you pick up the phone, you can dial a number. And when the person picks up, they say, you're getting a call from the Palm Beach County Jail. Will you accept reverse charges? And the person either says yes, and the call goes through, or the person says no. The person I had called was Jimmy Kane, the president of Bear Stearns. And I said, tell me what's going on. And so that
Literalmente teléfono para el señor Kane.
knowledge that the financial crisis happened with Jimmy, who was at the center of the storm, telling me about what Lehman had gone under, and they were trying to figure out a way, should they bail out Bear Stearns?
Did it strike you at the time of the mess you had made of your life to be in a situation that you're one of the greatest financial minds in the world, looked at by world leaders and asked your thinking by the most prominent and important people in the world, and here you are in solitary confinement. You got to make a collect call to somebody. Did it strike you at the time how all the threads of your life had come together and put you in a position, or you had put yourself in that position?
No.
So it never struck you when you had to make one of your 50% of your collect calls that day, you call the president or the head of the CEO of Bear Stearns, the biggest financial event in your life is taking place, of which one, every important person in the world would be seeking your opinion. Number two would be a once in a lifetime opportunity to apply your craft. Number three, it would be a once in a lifetime opportunity to make money if you were smart, and obviously you're smart. You're telling me here, truthfully, that it never hit you at all of how you'd ended up in a place where you had to make a collect phone call from a jail cell that was 6x9 with a steel bed and your food being passed in through a slot.
The question you want to ask is, who was the other call to?
Okay, who was the other call to?
The other call was to my friend at JP Morgan, who was then, I didn't know it at the time, trying to buy Bear Stearns. So at one point, I had two phones. It was difficult because they're afraid people are going to hang themselves with the phone cord. So they don't actually come together and...
Bueno, este fragmento de la entrevista claramente no envejeció de la mejor manera.
They're pretty short, so I was actually going between two phones talking to Bear Stearns and JP Morgan at the same time. So I found it amusing.
And it never struck you about how to end up in a situation like this?
No, that would be probably means I would be too self-aware.
You can't possibly expect me to believe this.
I know. I don't believe it.
It's no,
Even
you're telling me that during that.
Yo sí le creo porque, bueno, está la Realpolitik y, bueno, está la verdadera finanza, el verdadero sistema. Pueden ver como un criminal internacional que chantajea a todos esos políticos, todos esos famositos empresarios y también algunos banqueros. Bueno, lo hacía todo para una agencia de inteligencia, bueno, de sabemos qué país, ¿no? De esto se trata la realidad y esto es a detalle y lo está narrando este señor en primera persona.
Day, you never had a moment. You sat there and go, what the fuck have I done with my life that I'm in a 6x9 jail cell when I should be on a trading desk or I should be in my $250 million, greatest townhouse in New York City, taking calls from the king of Saudi Arabia, the president of China, the head of Russia, the president of the United States to save the world's population from a financial debacle. You honestly expect me to believe that that never happened?
You're suggesting I was somewhat depressed, and how could this happen to me?
I'm not saying depressed. I'm saying a moment of awareness of how could I get myself into this situation?
No, I would just say how strange that this happens. It's strange. I'm wearing a jumpsuit and flip-flops.
What color was the jumpsuit?
Brown.
Brown jumpsuit.
Yes.
I notice I don't see you in a lot of brown.
No.
Brown jumpsuit and flip-flops.
Flip-flops, yes.
With no access to books, no access to newspapers,
no access to anything.
You had lived on information.
Except my Almond Joy bars. I had extra Almond Joy bars.
Did you eat Almond Joy bars and things like that because you're afraid of what the cooks did to your food?
Yes.
Is that because of that you were in for the crimes that you were in for?
No, it was just in fact, I was.
It was because you're wealthy?
Yes.
How did you know that?
Well, people would constantly come if I was passing by or have to go for my medical. People would either ask to borrow money or make some other types of comments about.
In
the beginning,
what were the comments? At the beginning, what were the comments?
It serves you fucking rich guys right that you're here next to me.
There was nothing about your crimes.
No.
So all this rumor you hear all the time about people in prison that commit the type of crimes you commit, you're saying in your personal thing is not true.
No.
It was all because you were rich.
Yes.
And it was all because they wanted to borrow money.
Or get advice. Yes.
Where they get advice to go long.
Yes.
You're telling me
is this time to buy?
You're telling me in solitary confinement they're interested in going long.
Yeah. They want to know
what does that say about human nature?
Well, what I think the people find, one of the reasons they wanted to keep me in solitary confinement was they're afraid that everybody would want to know which stocks to buy. But what happened was after this crisis, now it's on the front page of every newspaper.
I don't want to lose this day.
Sorry.
When you first heard that, was it Bear Stearns had been kicked into bankruptcy, 6 months before?
No, it's the same time. This is part of the same deal.
I thought, no, Bear Stearns, they just said, the Bear Stearns, they saved Bear Stearns and didn't save Lehman Brothers. That's
right.
it.
They let
6 months before they had bailed out Bear Stearns. But Bear Stearns was still a zombie,
A shell of its former
a
self.
former self. But they had, quote unquote, saved it. They admit, why did they make the decision in your mind? Why did Hank Paulson and Bernanke, what's this concept of moral hazard? Explain to the audience what moral hazard is, and why did they save Bear Stearns 6 months before, and why did the smartest guys in the room decide not to save Lehman Brothers?
It's a good question. The real issue is I'd have to go back when you have these systems to the way your doctor responds to any type of emergency in your body. If they might decide to save your kidneys and let your gallbladder go because the gallbladder is less important to your overall system. If at that time, even it's not that long ago, the boogeyman was when said, well, what really happened? Jeffrey, what really happened? What is this financial crisis? And, some of the progressives and the right wing blame it on the banks. It was the banks' fault. And it's the fault of this very esoteric, unknown concept of derivatives. It was really the derivatives that caused this financial crisis because the derivatives got somehow out of control and like in the Mickey Mouse.
And that was the way you started your road to a billionaire went right through derivatives.
Yes. But derivatives were not the cause. Derivatives were not the cause at all. It's like saying your hair was the cause of your heart attack because it was on the top of your head.
So what was the cause?
There isn't, let me say, there's no one specific cause. These are system collapses. So many times when they have to make your death certificate, when you say, well, what did he die from? They'll say heart failure. But if you say, what was the cause of his heart failure? Well, he had low blood pressure, his sugar was high, he was diabetic, he had all these other problems. But they say, no, we need a word on your death certificate. Did he die from brain damage? Did he die from heart failure? That's the financial crisis. People said, well, what caused it? They wrote like on its death certificate, derivatives. But derivatives are not a fundamental cause of anything.
Was it Sunday or Monday? I take it was Monday morning when you made your two collect calls and you're talking to Bear Stearns on one hand and Morgan Stanley on the other.
JP Morgan.
That was Monday morning. Did you, Jeffrey, being one of the financial geniuses in the world, did you understand what Lehman Brothers going into bankruptcy, the domino effect that by Thursday, the financial system would be under such extremis that if it didn't have $1 trillion cash infusion in the United States, it might collapse? Did you know that at the time? Did you view that at the time?
Yes.
You did?
Yeah.
Why?
Again, I don't want to bore you or the audience with the idea of it's a medical procedure, but you had system failures. So you'd recognize that if I said to you, did you realize when your father was on the ground and he was clutching his chest and he couldn't breathe, it was a bad situation. He could die. That's how I saw it.
Did you immediately think about the commercial paper market? I mean, the mechanical triggers that actually you had to blow through these circuit boards. Did you know the circuits? Did you understand the circuits? Or did you have a concept of the circuits that were going to get blown through?
Yes, but only because of an analogy to a body. And in fact, from my telephones against the wall with my little metal wires, because the next day I talked to another person in Washington about the issues of what I thought was happening.
Ustedes están viendo que este señor desde la cárcel se estaba comunicando con toda la élite. Básicamente acaba de nombrar 2 autoridades de los bancos más importantes de Estados Unidos y ahora llama a Washington desde la cárcel.
And I made the same discussion about
They were at the Treasury Department?
Yes.
So in a 6x9 cell
the phones were outside the cell.
in Palm Beach County, California?
West Palm Beach, Florida.
West Palm Beach, Florida.
That's what you juice diet.
West Palm Beach, Florida. West Palm Beach, Florida. West Palm Beach, Florida. You're making a call to Washington, D.C. to talk to some deputy secretary of Treasury.
Someone in Treasury.
Right. Someone
Right.
in Treasury.
Right.
And that does not, the night before you go to bed, it doesn't dawn on you at all. You never have a moment of self-reflection that, how did I end up on this metal cot when I should be at the center of things?
No, I had a telephone. So I've said, I can talk to, it makes no difference where I am. In fact, I'm still talking to the same person if I was at my home in Palm Beach, but I'm
The
here in
difference your
jail.
home in Palm Beach.
I can dial my
That's
own phone.
That's bullshit. No, but you can also make 1,000 phone calls. Here you got to make one, and he's got to take.
Think
the
how much
charges.
better that was. I had to decide who was the right person to call. That was unusual for me because I would have called 20 people.
And
before.
what was the advice you gave?
I said, you have a sick patient.
Tenía 20 opciones para hacer esta clase de llamadas específicas sobre conocimientos que solamente personas con los más exclusivos y altos cargos importantes tendrían. Esto es increíble, señores.
And it's very much like a sick patient in the emergency room. You can't think about it like your car. People in normal walks of life think about money and things as a machine. And unfortunately, so if your car breaks, cars are always easy to fix. My jets, my cars, if it breaks, I know it can be fixed because it simply follows the same pattern. If this part breaks, you replace the part and the thing works again. People and the financial system are not machines. They can't be fixed the same way. You can't simply take out put some more juice into the commercial paper market, and that's like replacing the carburetor on the car. It's much more, I have a patient who can't breathe, has a stomach problem, can't see, looks bleeding at the same time. What do I do first? I have to think about it as a system. Where's the most logical place? What's the most dangerous place? If your heart stopped, we have to start your heart again. In the equivalent to the money market, why do I have to start your heart again? I need to get your blood flowing. If your blood stops, you're dead. If liquidity, which is the equivalent of blood in the financial system, dries up.
Once liquidity is basically cash, putting cash into the
Forget
system.
about what it is.
Okay.
Liquidity is liquidity. It allows the system, it's the blood of the system. You need to pump blood hard into the body of the economy to keep it flowing. And if you're, especially when you're worried about someone dying, you're not going to be worried about the niceties of, well, you got the shirt dirty and there was some damage. Pumping that blood, keep that heart
When you
pumping.
talked to the person in Treasury on Tuesday, the 16th, did you get a feeling as you were sitting in your 6x9 jail cell in West Palm Beach, Florida, that they were on top of things?
No, you can't. It's impossible to be on top of things. There's no such thing. It's, again, the doctor watching the patient die. You hopefully have some confidence that he's seen it before. He recognizes that there are some steps he has to take first before he bandages the guy's finger or worries about what shoes he has on. So you hope that the people in charge, your doctors who are working on the emergency patient, have enough experience and, frankly, judgment to try to keep the patient alive.
Did you think that they had those things, patience and judgment?
They had pretty good judgment, and you needed a lot of luck, just like in the dead patient. You need to, hopefully you put that blood in and it's not too late. And you make some mistakes, but you have to know you're going to have to give it a shock.
In the run up to the September crash of 2008,
Yeah.
I guess you weren't occupied with finance. That whole summer, how long had you been in jail?
Went to jail June 30th.
So the entire summer.
Yes.
Before you went into jail, you were still very active in the financial markets.
Yes.
When I say active, you trade currencies every day, you trade stocks every day. When people,
I don't do any.
someone like you, or you give advice to people to trade stocks or trade currencies.
I don't trade every day. I think that's like Woody Allen said. You can't beat the bank. So I try to pick my spots. George Soros picked his spot when the pound collapsed. This would have been a great money-making opportunity that passed me by when I was in jail, but that's not how I think.
In the run-up to that, in the spring of 2008, that's when Bear Stearns got in problems, I think, in the spring of 2008, and they decided to bail it out. Did the Bear Stearns guys talk to you for advice at that time when the big crisis in Bear Stearns?
No, but see, again, unbeknownst to most people, and it's easy to blame people for the financial crisis, like you'd blame someone for giving your father the drink before he had his heart attack. But what really happened, the real enemy of the finance system was Bill Clinton. And if you ask me what and who caused the financial crisis, I would tell you it was Bill Clinton.
Because
Woody Allen, Soros, Bill Clinton, todos ellos en las listas, los nombres que está tirando Jeffrey.
of what Bob Rubin and he did to the deregulate the financial system?
No. Because as of the last time we had our 60-minute interview, you talked to me about home ownership. And you asked me whether everyone should own a home. And I told you, no, it's too risky.
So the financial collapse of 2008 is because of hardworking African Americans, Hispanics, and whites who wanted to have a ownership stake in the society that all rests on their shoulders. They're the culprits.
No, not at all.
Okay, then
I didn't say they were the culprits. I was pretty clear it was Bill Clinton.
Okay.
And why was it Bill Clinton? Because Bill Clinton wanted to get votes from those people. And he sold them the idea that instead of renting in a house, and historically the values of houses have gone up, and he said, you guys in these local communities who haven't been able to afford a house before, I'm going to show you a way. I'm going to give you a way, because I'm sure I'll get your vote, that you can own a house, because I want your vote. So what we're going to do is I'm going to let you buy a house, Mr. Bannon, when you really, you're right on the border, maybe, or not even on the border. Your credit is not good. Okay, let's be honest. And it's not my fault. It's not Bill Clinton's fault. But if whatever happens, at the moment your credit score or whatever it is, your credit's not good. Now, normally, you come to me and want to borrow money. I'm a bank. And I say, I'm sorry, Mr. Bannon, I can't lend you money because your credit score is not up to where it needs to be. Hopefully, if you work harder and clean up some of your problems, it will be. But no, what I say to you is, I'm going to figure out a way to lend you, not give you. I'm going to lend you money anyway, though you don't have a good credit score. And don't worry, I'm going to get rid of the term that you don't have bad credit. Bad credit sounds pejorative. You don't want to be a person.
Sounds judgmental.
Yes, sounds judgmental. So what we're going to do is we're going to call your credit situation subprime. Oh, nobody knows what that means. Subprime. That means prime is good credit. Subprime is not good credit, less than good credit. So we'll call it something that people really won't follow. And we'll tell you what, we're going to have people lend you money, though you are a subprime borrower. And I will figure out some government agencies to guarantee your loan, though I don't think you're a good risk. So the banks say, no, we don't want, initially, the bank said, sorry, this is too risky, Mr. President, for us. We're in the business of managing risk. It's not our money. It's the hard-working people's money sitting in our bank. We can't lend to people whose credit is not prime. You're asking us to lend to people who are subprime. And he says, here's the key, if you don't, Mr. Bannon, I'm going to make sure the Justice Department charges you with discriminatory lending because you refuse to lend to my subprimers. In business terms, you should never lend to. But what we'll do is I'm going to form an agency called Fannie Mae and Ginnie Mae, just another agency names. They'll guarantee your loan. So don't worry. Don't worry. You don't have to pay it back anymore. Even though and maybe you don't even have to work as hard anymore. That's probably a harsh statement, but These players, these two big firms, Fannie Mae, will guarantee the fact that that bank will receive its money. Now, the bank says, wow, best deal in history. I refused to lend to Mr. Bannon, but now he has the big brother, his Uncle Sam. He went to his Uncle Sam, and Uncle Sam says, I'm guaranteeing it. The bank says, I want everybody. Give me as many people as you can give me, because Uncle Sam is the best credit in the world. Not only that, it's the United States government.
¿Esto no les suena conocido de algo, algunas crisis que pasaron en ciertos países?
We'll take it all. We'll take as much subprime as we can handle, because it's the best investment for the moment. It's a strange investment because it has politics that has inserted its way into the numbers. Politics doesn't belong in the markets, but now we're going to have, I want the votes. We'll make guarantees that you who can't get a house normally will be able to get a house from the bank. The bank says, this is the best deal in history. We will package 100, 300, 1,000 of you subprimers, and we'll sell it off to somebody else. And the whole system becomes mired in subprime mortgages. That's becomes the
What do
issue.
you mean mired? There's just too much supply. It's a supply-demand problem. You get too much supply.
No, it's a very good question. What does too much supply mean? Well, then you get the people, go back to your first question to me. Government leaders. Government leaders know if they're good.
Va a hablar de sus amigos.
And they can do mathematics, they can balance their checkbooks. So certain people in Congress said, well, how do you value these subprime mortgages? The banks say, we've been valuing them the same way we've always valued them for the past 20 years. The accounting firms, there's something in this country called GAAP accounting, which is a standard type of accounting. And we account for them the same way we've always accounted for them. If we paid $1,000 for your mortgage last night, when we put it on our books today, we're going to say its value is $1,000. It makes sense. I paid for it. What's its value? It's $1,000. That's what I paid for it last night. No. The Congress people said, that's not really a good answer, you know. That doesn't give us confidence that you know what you're doing. Because what happens if you have to sell it tomorrow morning? If something's happened and you have to sell it. Remember, there's kinds of stress tests. Would you be able to value it at what you paid for it the day before? And Wall Street says, that's not the way you can think about this. This is crazy. We always value things at the cost from the day before. And they changed the accounting method, in essence, to say not what it was worth yesterday, but if I have to sell, what would it be worth? That's impossible. So what happens is every bank now has to value something they bought yesterday at lower than they paid. Never before in 20 years did they have to do this. So something they bought at 1,000, on their books was 1,000, is now 990. That starts to, you asked the question about what did I start to think about. Something's 1,000 and 990, this person now has to value it at 980.
When did you first start to get nervous, understanding Bill Clinton in all this? Did you change glasses?
Yes,
Okay.
I changed shirt.
I saw the black.
Are you okay with the?
Yeah, great. I think we're gonna have all kinds of changes.
I'm experimenting. Okay.
When did you get a feeling? Did you ever anticipate before it happened, something like 2008 could happen?
No.
How could that be?
It's the word I'm going to beat it to death, is that it's very much like would I anticipate I'll have a heart attack tomorrow? Unlikely.
Was 2008 a heart attack or a stroke? Debilitating.
It's a better. It was both. But why was it both? Because in fact, as I said, the blood was getting dried up in the system, and the head, which is sort of the central bank, wasn't working. So to some extent, it was a combination. It was a crisis.
Did you see that building up over time?
It's always been lurking in the background. I mean, if you have an older parent, would you say it's possible? Did you anticipate him having a heart attack today? No, you hope things are going to go better and maybe they'll fix it up. The system was getting too complex, and it wasn't based on derivatives, because what people keep forgetting, and as I was just explaining, Wall Street and in many professions, including Wall Street makes it sound complicated. They don't want the little guy to understand what they do, because they make so much money and they don't do very much. So they couch it in words like derivative and stock options and commodity futures and different types of contracts. It's all everyone is capable of understanding it. It is not complicated. But Wall Street, because they make so much money from doing fairly simple things, needs to make it more complicated than it really is.
We had a very big recession in the early 90s based upon real estate and Japan basically imploding.
Let's again,
Okay.
You had a recession in the 90s. I don't know what it's based upon. It's always interesting to look back and say, separate from there's certain triggers, like in the 70s, there was a...
What do you think it was based upon, the 90s downturn? It's clearly there was a huge downturn.
No, I know there was a downturn. That's what I know for sure.
That's a fact.
That's all. Everything else is sort of speculation about why did he have that?
I understand that, but there's some speculation that has 0% probability of being true, and there's others that have 90%. In the range, when you look at the range of alternatives of what could have caused it in 90, and what I'm trying to do is get you all the way up to 2008. Look, you're the smartest guy in the room, right? You know that. Do you think there's anybody in the world today?
Oops, this is going to be a bad question.
No, but do you think anybody in the world today, the Alan Greenspans, the Bernankes, is there any central banker you know, any partner of any Wall Street firm, any guy running a trading desk, and I would take it that would be, or anybody at a Larry Fink at BlackRock, Steve Schwartzman at Blackstone, the top 100 financial guys, and let's throw in a couple of Nobel economists, and let's throw in the best professors at Wharton, at Harvard, at Stanford. Do you think that there's anybody that understands money or understands the world's financial system as good as you?
Uy, aquí se vienen los buenos, damas y caballeros.
There must be.
But it doesn't come to the top of the head.
No.
Okay, fine. Now that I've gotten that, let's go back to 1990. In that arc from the fall of the Berlin Wall to 2008.
Good.
We started with the implosion in Tokyo of the Japanese economy, Japanese financial markets. We had the huge run up in internet stocks, right? We had the implosion of that in 2000. The bankruptcy of Drexel Burnham in 90, implosion of Japan, huge run up in equity markets for the internet, implosion of the internet in 2000, 10 years later, roughly. And then this run up through the Iraq war and all that, the run up to 2008. Every 10 years, it seems like we're in some sort of 10 years before the 1990s was the 70s.
You sound like an astrologer.
Okay.
And not a finance person.
I'm not a mathematician. It just seems to me a pattern of every 10 years.
That's misleading. That's exactly right. Because people like to see patterns. People like to see patterns where there are none.
So a pattern of a financial crisis every 10 years is just in my mind.
Yes.
Long-term capital that had to be bailed out back in the late 90s when everybody panicked. And that wasn't that bailout today would look small, and it was a $5 billion or was $30 billion.
Businesses fail all the time.
But long-term capital, and the Federal Reserve stepped in.
But I'm saying people go bad. Things go bad all the time.
Yes, you're correct. The audience is watching this, the little guys, they go bankrupt all the time and nobody gives a shit. You know why? They're a little guy. But when long-term capital management goes bankrupt, or Bear Stearns goes bankrupt, or Lehman Brothers goes bankrupt, people care because
it's an unfair characterization.
Why do you say that?
Because again, it's the complexity of the situation. If you think about you have a complex system, you have your body. Now, in fact, the little guy is my finger. This is.
And Bear Stearns is your heart.
That's correct. The banking system is my heart. The system, I can't risk because remember,
Okay,
it's not
so
only my.
You haven't been able to name.
Hang
another,
on.
You haven't.
What,
hang on. No, hang on.
I was trying to hang. I wanted to see if the hang on worked.
No. You haven't been able. You're not good enough yet. You're like junior wizard trying to do it. You haven't. Yes. I'll say, since we can't name another guy that's as good as you. Now, there may be a couple out there. You're not bragging. You're humble. It had to be sometime. Please tell me there was some time before you went to jail and basically got cut off from daily information in the summer of 2008, that you started to get very nervous that this complex system, that something was deeply wrong.
Okay, first, let's go back. When I say no one understands the system better than I do, it doesn't mean I
You always
understand.
sound like a doctor. You're afraid he's going to get sued for giving a thing.
Yes,
You're not taking on any liability. There's no contingent liability here for your answers.
No. But the word understand is the problem.
Okay.
I don't understand the system. So I don't understand the financial
Will you
system.
please stop? You cannot sit here and tell me.
No.
What we just went through, I'll go through again. The hedge fund managers, the money managers, the central bankers, the commercial bankers, the heads of the investment banks, the heads of all the trading desks, the top economists, and I'll throw in the business school lecturers at Stanford. Of all the top 200, 250, you can't name at the top of your head the guys are at least at your level. You have to understand it somewhat.
No. Sorry. We all don't understand it. No one understands it. It's a miracle. It's that's part of the problem. It's impossible to
Quiten sus propias conclusiones a partir de lo que acaba de decir.
understand. That word understand simply means if this happens here, that will happen there. It's predictable. Understanding means it's predictable. It's not predictable. That's the problem. It's in complex systems, that was the fascination. Is there a way to tease out some level of predictability?
So even
No, in fact, you would ask the question, it's a great question, which was it a stroke or a heart attack? Now, most people don't know that before they were going to have a stroke, they had a stroke. They just have a stroke. Do they understand why? In hindsight, you go back and you can make lots of explanations that might sound good. And if you're talking to the working man, you're using language that he'll never understand. It's complex. So he's just like going to his doctor. He says he has a gastrointestinal problem, or he has diverticulitis, as opposed to saying, you had a stomach ache, you ate bad food. People don't like to say it in normal, everyman terms. The system had a stroke, but we don't know why.
But you just, okay. Hardworking people, and there's a great social benefit, would you not agree, with having people having ownership in the system?
When you say ownership in the system, it doesn't mean.
Let's start over.
Okay.
So flip
Sorry.
over your phone too, because
Yes.
I don't want anyone to see
Yeah.
on your phone. So maybe flip it down or something.
Yeah.
Me da mucha gracia que se cambió justamente para aparecer aparentemente, ¿cómo se llamaba este señor de Apple? Steve Jobs.
Yeah, who knows what the fuck comes up with that phone?
That's correct.
Which one has sent you?
KSA.
I can't not believe I've got the magic moment when you're in fucking prison or jail, wherever the fuck it is.
It's
in
crazy.
solitary.
Now, there's a funny part to that we missed, which is said.
Go ahead, tell it.
The funny part is what you asked me.
Is there anything funnier than that?
No,
For black humor,
I don't make any black comments. Sorry.
Hasta en eso era racista. Increíble.
You asked me what I was wearing.
That's right. You're too wrapped up in the Me Too movement.
Yes. So I was wearing a brown jumper and a brown pair of pants given to me by the jail with the word trustee on the back.
Because you had qualified to be a trustee?
Well, the funny part was it was spelled Trusty. So I wasn't really sure. I'd been a trustee in many different operations, but it was the first time it was actually printed on my back and spelled incorrectly.
Probably had a higher level of being a trustee at that than you had at all the boards that you were trustees, right?
Yes, right, because the trustee meant you get two devices to clean your toilet as opposed to one.
Yeah, but it also meant that you had some sort of personal fiduciary own responsibility for oneself, right?
In the jail? You
Well,
mean?
that's what being a trustee is. That's where they give you two.
Yes, you get two cleaners. I was a trustee in the jail because I was able to teach some of the kids to help them get their GED. So that's how they gave me a trustee job.
There's no time. I got to go back to this because I'm like a dog with a bone in this thing.
Yes.
You can't. There's something deeply fucked up with you.
At least something.
Well, we know there are things deeply fucked up with this. You will get through in this film,
Right.
but
Bannon sabía cosas, claramente a esta altura sabía cosas y se las estaba diciendo porque no hay otra manera en la que lo trate de esa manera y al parecer son colegas de trabajo, o al menos están en la misma línea de trabajo, dado que trabajaban para corporaciones y agencias muy parecidas, ¿no?
you cannot possibly have to sit there knowing that you came from nowhere, knowing that you went to the very top of what is considered outside of science and maybe physics, the thing people most admire because it's like alchemy, understanding high finance. To sit there in what will be the defining financial crisis of our time, like Black Friday or Black
Yes.
Monday, whatever it was in the Great Depression, and be there at that exact moment, triggered in part by a firm that you used to be a partner in and knew intimately well, and it created much of your initial net worth because of. And know that you couldn't, someone who lives on a phone, right?
Yes.
Because you do live on a phone, right?
Correct.
You had to make just two collect calls. You cannot tell me sometime during that day you did not have that conversation with yourself of how the fuck did I do this to myself to put myself in West Palm Beach in a 6x9 cell with a metal fucking bed with a brown shirt that said trustee spelled wrong.
So did I find it amazing that I was there? That's a
Not
better,
amazing. I don't want to say it was
No.
not funny. Oh, I thought
I wasn't funny.
Right.
but
Not
I-
amazing.
no,
Did
it was
you-
incredible.
Incredible in what way?
This-
Incredible, like how do I do this to myself?
No, it's as incredible as me sitting here in this house. They're both just two sides of the coin. That's how I think about it. That my life today is incredible.
Do you consider yourself a stoic?
No, I consider myself a hermit. Stoics are not very happy.
El ermitaño de la isla.
Being a hermit then, being in that 6x9 cell, being in the cell, qua the cell was not the problem, right?
Correct.
What was the problem?
The eating the almond joy bars.
Because you couldn't eat the food.
No, right. And but remember, my life is
Did that ever strike you that I can't eat the food because somebody might have done something to it? I gotta live off an almond joy bar, one a day or two a day or whatever. How many ever sneak in a day?
no sneaking in.
Your one almond joy bar, it did not hit you at some time? How the fuck did I do this?
No.
Let's go back to the spring of 2008. Were you so wrapped up in your personal issues at the time you were not spending enough time on the financial markets, or were you deeply involved in the financial markets like you normally were? in the
No,
spring of 08?
I was involved.
And you, so we're saying that the smartest guy in the room didn't see it coming.
No, of course.
The bankruptcy of Bear Stearns, you just thought was a Bear Stearns problem. You didn't see it as systemic.
I know you keep harping on it, but it's not
Because you're a mathematician and understand systems.
I-
It seems that anybody that understands that they had a systemic problem, you at least be the first on the early search radar. If you're not going to see it, then I'm really afraid, because that means that I always assume there's at least a set of guys out there that have some sort of sense that something's not right.
Imagine the guy who has a stroke or had the heart attack. When you ask him, did you feel funny the day before? He's going to tell you, yeah, I didn't feel right. Something was off. I didn't feel right. I had my stomach was right. I felt a little dizzy. I felt a little weak. But if you asked him the day before, do you think you're going to have a heart attack tomorrow? He'd say, no, I just feel a little weak. I'm a little dizzy. My stomach hurts. So these systems, and that's the issue of complexity. What complexity says is that, in fact, everything seems to go along, and people have seen it. One of the great examples of complex systems is sand dunes. In fact, the sand keeps building up. People have seen some, and all of a sudden, one more sand drop, and all the sand starts running down the hills. That's the way I see the financial markets.
Well, you funded Santa Fe in the early 90s or late 80s?
I believe it was early 90s. I can get back to you.
But early 90s, Santa Fe was funded for the study of complexity theory.
It was math. So let's back up. So why did I buy a ranch in New Mexico in 1993? So that gives you some sense. So I would have funded it in 1990.
¿Se estará refiriendo al rancho que todos conocemos? Habrá que ver.
Los Alamos, which was the high energy lab up in New Mexico, was losing all its scientists.
And also, Alamos, it was where Oppenheimer and where a lot of the nuclear weapons program, the bomb.
That's where the Manhattan Project.
Manhattan Project was at Los Alamos, and you bought your property out in New Mexico to be near that?
Yes, because the scientists were they cut the funding for high energy physics. But the people who worked in Los Alamos would still be in the Santa Fe area.
They cut that because this was the Cold War dividend, right?
I don't remember exactly why. It was because, again, people thought that physics and high energy physics really wasn't that important.
Because that was about nuclear weapons.
No, it was because they decided, which maybe not right. This was the same time that Murray Gell-Mann came up with the term quark, Q-U-A-R-K. He picked it out of an old poem, the word quark, but it was mysterious. So they were starting to understand in the 90s that our world of...
En lo que va de esta entrevista, esta es como la cuarta vez que ellos hacen una alusión a que la matemática y, por supuesto, los mercados financieros tienen una especie de connotación esotérica. La verdad que me gustaría escuchar la opinión de Nicolás Martínez Laje sobre estos temas. Es increíble, esta es la cuarta vez que lo escuchamos a él hacer una referencia sobre eso que yo haya contado, probablemente hay más.
The physics world, there was things that were just unexplainable. They called it strange things. You gave it a name. You gave it some characteristics. You called it had charm, was one of the terms. It had a charm. It had a flavor. It had a color. But no one, Mr. Bannon, understood what it was. Just like the financial system.
And you wanted to investigate that?
I wanted to see if we could build tools so others smarter than me could help investigate it.
And that was the beginning of your concept of the Santa Fe Institute?
Yes.
And Santa Fe Institute was founded to do study in this type of...
Can these areas of strange things be described by some form of mathematics?
So that's what I'm trying to get at. The foundational thought, the organizing principle of Santa Fe,
yes,
in the high physics lab at Los Alamos, right, which had been the headquarters of Manhattan, and the Trinity Project, right, the bomb.
Yes.
So you're talking about the elite, the high priest
of physics.
Of physics.
Yes, sir.
Which high priest of physics, some subset of that is also mathematics.
Yes, they're both similar.
Project out. One of the tools you want to do is to make sure that in this complex system, the finance system, I'm doing a lot of this for philanthropy and a lot for the good of mankind, but also to be able to understand this complex system, the most complex outside of maybe our body, of the financial world.
Yes.
Did they create tools, or were you smarter in than the mid-aughts 15 years later than you had been then because of work that was done at Santa Fe?
No, it was great. But in fact, most of the money, most of my philanthropy in the area of, can you describe things that appear to be unexplainable by mathematics, and can you fund people who have new ideas? And unfortunately, when someone thinks they've been able to, there was a man, Stuart Kaufman, when they think okay, I figured out how to be able to predict the unpredictable, what appears to other people to be unpredictable. But my system, in those days it was called genetic algorithms, can predict what things will happen, then they all want to make money. So they use their systems to try to figure out, they know they have figured out the way to make money because they figured out the unexplainable. They try, they go bankrupt, and we start again. So with a cold view, what I've come to realize is that the attempt to mathematize, formularize, or what in your prior work, to understand what really is, in today's world, still unexplainable, is impossible. They're miracles.
Your first head of Santa Fe was Christopher
Langdon, I think.
Langdon from
But
Australia.
Murray Gell-Mann was
Murray
really
Gell-Mann
was
was
the
the-
funder.
he
He
was-
was the
Yes,
rock.
Yes, he was the rock. He was a Nobel Prize winner.
Yes.
Yes, and a wonderful guy. He came out and helped us with the Biosphere 2 project. He came with Chris Langdon.
Yeah.
Chris Langdon was the operator, the day-to-day guy.
Chris was doing artificial life.
Right.
Murray tried to lead his own artificial life.
Yes. When Chris came to Biosphere 2 for the first big conference we had in 1994, he was one of the most impressive guys there among all the world's elite. Kew Gardens, the Lawrence Livermore Lab, the labs at Sandia, all the major universities, Lamont Doherty, all the big Earth observatories, Woods Hole. What set Langdon apart, I thought, and the reason I invited Santa Fe to be part of it, was Langdon actually made a presentation that everything, and he was making this to scientists, a lot of marine biologists, a lot of people that just
Hasta imita las poses que hacía Steve Jobs, es increíble.
beginning, Wally Broker and people who were just beginning the study of climate change, at that time called global warming, that he made this compelling presentation that everything's really mathematics.
Yes.
It's all just back to math. And you have to, all these experiments you do, you're not, one of the reasons they're not considered by the high priest in physics as being real experiments is that they don't have a mathematical basis to it, and everything has a mathematical basis to it. Langdon seemed like a radical visionary. What happened to that concept?
You go back 350 years. So you have Isaac Newton, you have Leibniz. From move forward, you have people like Heisenberg and Gödel, and what every one of those mathematicians and philosophers came to understand is that there's something there's numbers can describe certain things, approximate certain things. But in fact, trying to put measurements and numbers on other things that are really unexplainable is folly. It's so 300 years ago, they said that unexplainable realm was God. And people who attempted, in fact, to explain the unexplainable, who said, yes, I understand the unexplainable, were charlatans. They were the occults. They were the astrologers. They were the con men.
Alchemist.
Yes. Well, no, alchemist was, in fact, they believed that there was a way to transmute one metal into another. In fact, they always wanted to see if they can create gold. There's no reason, if you think about it, they recognize that one metal is different than another metal because it has some additional pieces to it. It has additional neutrons or protons or electrons. So because they thought it was a machine, they believed it was a machine, if I can take 5 protons and add 5, that gives me 10, I should be able to get gold. Move everything around inside these systems, the molecules transmute one molecule into another, and if this molecule I've transmuted it into is gold, I'm a rich man. It's back to money. But there's something strange happens. Isaac Newton says, this is really weird. If I want to push a ball on the table, I have to touch it. Maybe I have to blow on it. But I actually have to push one side of the ball or the book to move that side. I'm pushing here, and obviously this thing is what appears to us humans to be solid, so it moves as one thing. But the only way to get something to move was to touch it or put a force against it. Okay, seems to make sense. Everybody has that experience. I want to lift a glass, I lift it. If I want to push a ball, I push it. If I want to pull a ball, I pull it. But he recognized when the ball fell off the table, it went in a different direction. How's that possible? Nobody pushed the ball down. And he says, this is crazy. Why did the ball go down? I didn't push it. I just let it go. So someone's pushing the ball, because I know that I am confident that the only thing that gets something to move is with a force that pushes. So there's a force that's pushing the ball down. In fact, he called it gravity. He measured how fast it was pulled, but never was able to explain why it happened. How is it? What is gravity? It's this, everybody says, well, why did the ball fall to the ground? Because gravity took it. But what's gravity? That's, as Feynman would say, that's the name of the thing. We have no idea what it is. This goes to Santa Fe. They were trying to explain the unexplainable. Can we measure? Can we figure out a way to predict the stock markets using these types of chaos complexity?
Before we get there, let's walk back through it. Let's go back to Newton.
Sure.
Pre-Newton and then Newton. What did Newton solve that for millennia up to Newton?
Recordemos, hace poco hizo un informe sobre la cronología del sionismo y cómo se relaciona al, por supuesto, movimiento actual del sionismo político. Y también les quiero recordar que Newton era principalmente se dedicaba a la teología en exceso, le gustaba eso en particular, era lo que él prefería. Y bueno, secundariamente hacía otras cosas de ciencia.
Had not been solved. And then I want to go forward all the way to Santa Fe, what they were trying to solve. Let's start with just 2 or 3 of the basic guys, but let's go with Newton. What pre-Newton, it was what? And then why is Newton such a
genius?
In such a, in the, I think mathematically, they told me one time, I've seen there's been 115 billion people roughly that have lived on the earth. And of that 115 billion, Newton.
Are you sure that's a number? That sounds a lot, very high. We only have 7 now.
I think in the history of the earth, I think it's, I'll pull up the stat for you, but I think it's 115 billion people, they figure.
That probably is inflation. That's why you
have lived through the earth. But he's one of the handful of the most important. What did he solve for? Why is he so important for how we live today? And then we want to go through Leibniz and the other 2 or 3 other major ones that get us to Santa Fe.
Well, it's a long journey.
This is the heart of what we're trying to do.
Let me take a bit of a detour just a second. What if you went to high school and the last year in your high school, you took calculus. So Isaac Newton sort of invents calculus. Well, that sounds invents, mathematicians.
To torture seniors in high school before they graduate.
Yes, but obviously.
Constantemente están haciendo mención de Isaac Newton y también del esoterismo y tratan de unir todo esto a la matemática. La verdad que estoy empezando a cuestionarme de si es que no es esto, ya que ambos son agentes de inteligencia, una especie de propaganda para tratar de distraer de distintas cuestiones, ¿no? Es bastante interesante, pero bueno, esta edición se ha extendido lo suficiente, así que quiero, recordarles que pueden participar con nosotros en el proyecto para que el canal pueda continuar. Lo vamos a ir viendo a continuación.
Hace más de 5 años abrí este canal porque creo que educar es combatir. Y ni en el mejor de mis sueños pude vislumbrar a dónde llegaríamos juntos. Más de 750.000 suscriptores, más de 180 millones de visitas y un batallón de documentales exhaustivos que desenmascaran a los peores villanos y tiranos de nuestra era. Estoy eternamente agradecido a ustedes, mi público, por permitirme hacer lo que más amo. Un periodismo veraz, independiente, libre y combativo. Si realmente quieres que sigamos contándote la cruda realidad para que puedas prepararte ante sus desafíos en este mundo turbulento, realmente necesitamos tu ayuda. No solo para continuar con una 7ª temporada de Los Liberales, sino para innovar y dar un salto de calidad. Esto significa financiar un nuevo estudio que elevará la calidad audiovisual y nos permitirá introducir nuevos formatos, como debates o entrevistas en vivo con personajes de lujo. Nuestro objetivo es reunir $50.000 para este proyecto, que incluye tanto mejoras técnicas como construcción y personal. Pero como nada es gratis en la vida, por supuesto que si nos apoyas en esta aventura, recibirás tu recompensa. ¿Cómo? A través de nuestra nueva tienda en patreon.com/Nicolás Moraz. Sí, ahora los liberales tenemos tienda. Ahora puedes hacer una compra única que impulsará la renovación de los liberales y para ello no es necesario que te unas como aportante mensual. Entras a patreon.com/Nicolás Moraz y compras lo que quieras. En nuestra tienda podrás obtener por $25 una carta de agradecimiento personalizada y firmada por mí. Por $50 la misma carta más un clip de agradecimiento a tu persona o a quien desees. Por $100 podrás tener una amplia videollamada conmigo sobre los temas que quieras. A partir de $250 podrás encargarle a este equipo periodístico de lujo un informe sobre el tema que tú quieras. Por supuesto, tratado desde nuestro enfoque. Y con $1.000 puedes conseguir un documental de 1 hora y media, de esos que hacen historia. Y cuidado, desde $1.500 podrás adquirir opciones para publicitar tu marca en este canal, uno de los principales medios independientes de YouTube en español y de los más seguidos por los hispanos en Estados Unidos, los españoles, los mexicanos, los argentinos y el resto de América Latina. Y atención, cualquier compra que hagas te dará un gran descuento si quieres unirte a nuestra familia de mecenas con los planes mensuales. Ahora, estimado amigo o amiga, depende de ti. ¿Seguiremos creciendo juntos? Ingresa a patreon.com/Nicolás Moraz y hazlo realidad.